Welcome to a conversation that needs maturity, honesty, and a little open-mindedness. Because if you've ever asked yourself why so many women find entering from the back incredibly intense and, dare I say, irresistibly sweet, you're about to understand the real reasons. There's something powerful that happens in a woman's body and mind when she feels safe enough to surrender. And when I say surrender, I'm not just talking about letting someone take control physically. I'm talking about a psychological switch that flips inside her, a switch that says she's being led, held, and guided by someone who understands both her pleasure and her boundaries, someone who knows the delicate balance between being assertive and being gentle, someone who doesn't just take control for his own satisfaction, but does so in a way that makes her feel deeply desired. And that's where the magic of dominance from the back comes into play. Not dominance in the sense of aggression or force, but a confident presence, a man who knows what he wants, who communicates through action, touch, pressure, rhythm, and even silence. And it's in this silence that her body begins to listen, her breath starts to deepen, her senses sharpen, and her walls soften. Because when a man takes her from behind with intention, not just for thrill, but to give her something unforgettable, something that says, "I see you," without even seeing her face, it's a whole different kind of connection, one that many women crave but don't often talk about because it's so layered with vulnerability. And yet it's that exact vulnerability that makes it sweet, not because she's weak or submissive, but because she's finally allowed to stop performing, to stop thinking, to stop managing how she looks or what she should do next, and instead just be. And when a man positions himself behind her, he becomes her anchor, her gravity, her stability in a moment that invites surrender, and that surrender becomes pleasure, not in conventional sense alone, but in the emotional sense, the kind that lights up her nervous system and quiets her anxious thoughts, the kind that reminds her she's still a woman who can be guided, held, led, and ravished with care, because real dominance isn't about showing off your strength. It's about offering safety through strength. Not just safety from the world, but safety from her own overthinking mind, from her doubts, from her inner critic. And in those moments when she feels your body wrap around hers, when she hears the firmness in your breath, when she feels the grip of your hand, holding her hips like she's the most precious thing in the world, something inside her awakens, something deep and often buried under responsibility, pressure, expectation, and that something whispers you're allowed to feel. And that's what makes it so sweet, the fact that this position allows her to experience dominance not as something forced but something gifted, a leadership that says, "I've got you," without needing to say a single word. And in that quiet she opens, in that quiet she arches, she softens, she moans, she lets go. And when a woman lets go from the inside, when her breath syncs with yours, when her body starts to respond without her even thinking about it, that's when you've truly touched her, not just physically, but emotionally, and that is where real intimacy lives, in those spaces where she feels completely handled, completely adored, completely known without even facing you. It's wild, isn't it, that not seeing each other's eyes can create one of the deepest emotional feelings she'll ever experience, and that's because what she's feeling has nothing to do with the visual and everything to do with the energy you're bringing to her. If your energy is chaotic, rushed, disconnected, she'll feel it immediately and tense up, she'll retreat. But if your energy is grounded, deliberate, and clear, she'll melt into you. And once she melts, you unlock her softness, her wetness, her heat, her vulnerability, all of it. Not because you demanded it, but because she gave it freely. And it's that offering, that voluntary surrender, that makes everything feel amplified. The sweetness, the closeness, the depth, it all increases because she's not resisting, she's not guarding herself, she's not calculating anything. And this is where you learn that dominance is not a loud voice, it's not brute force, it's not rough hands or heavy breathing. It's how you make her feel while you lead her, and when you lead from behind with intention, control, and presence, you become more than a partner in that moment. You become the force she's been silently hoping would take her past the limits of her thoughts and into the raw truth of her body, where she can be touched not just in her skin but in her spirit, where every movement becomes communication, where every grip becomes reassurance, and where the rhythm becomes an unspoken conversation between her yearning and your ability to answer it with every stroke. And it's in that sweet in-between, between control and care, between depth and rhythm, between her moans and your breath, that she feels most alive, most feminine, most claimed. And when she feels claimed, not in an ownership sense, but in an emotional, spiritual, and sexual sense, there's no greater sweetness she'll remember, because she knows in that moment she wasn't just taken, she was deeply understood. And in a world where women are constantly expected to be in control, in charge, and in their heads, there's something uniquely liberating about giving herself to someone who knows how to lead her back into her body, back into her softness, back into her own sweetness. And that's the real reason why she feels it so deeply, so sweetly, and so completely. When you enter from behind, there's something undeniably electric about the way her body responds when touched from angles that awaken new nerve endings. And when you enter from the back, it's not just about novelty or position. It's about the way sensation builds differently, how the body reacts when it's stretched into a different shape, when the hips tilt forward, when her back arches instinctively, and the alignment between your bodies changes the way everything feels. The truth is, a woman's pleasure isn't only tied to the surface of her skin. It's embedded in the way her body is stimulated inside and out. And this particular position allows for access to places that often go untouched, zones that hold heat, sensitivity, and potential she didn't even know existed until that moment arrived. And the depth that comes with it isn't just physical, it's emotional. It's the kind that feels intense in all the right ways, because this kind of access, this kind of alignment, creates a pressure that presses up against areas within her that are deeply responsive, places that trigger waves that roll through her thighs, her spine, her chest, places that make her tremble without warning, that make her toes curl and her voice catch in her throat. And the beauty is, she can't control it, because it sneaks up on her. It surprises her in the best way. And sometimes the best kind of pleasure is the kind that catches you off guard, the kind that doesn't feel rehearsed or expected. It feels like discovery. It feels like a secret passage within her has been unlocked, and the deeper you move, the more you explore, the more her body starts to reveal what truly drives her wild. The sensation becomes layered, not just because of the depth, but because of the angle. And that angle matters more than you know, because it shifts how the walls inside her are being touched. It shifts where the pressure lands, and those shifts are everything. They change the intensity, the rhythm, the stretch. And when her body feels something new, something slightly unfamiliar but deliciously intense, her mind doesn't have time to think. All it can do is feel, and that's when she really starts to moan, not because she wants to impress you, but because she can't help it. It's pouring out of her. And when your hands are on her waist or her thighs or wrapped around her back, and you move in sync with what her body is craving, that's when the pleasure starts to feel overwhelming in the best possible way, because it's no longer just physical stimulation, it's sensory overload. It's an orchestra of touch, sound, and breath. And when her senses are heightened like that, even the smallest movements can feel like explosions. Even the gentlest thrust can create waves that ripple through her, and her skin becomes more sensitive, her ears more tuned into your breath, her neck more open to your kisses, because her body is in a heightened state of awareness, of openness, and that openness is a gift. It means she trusts you enough to let her body take over, to let the moment lead. And in this kind of stimulation, there's something else happening too, because from behind, you get to touch more than just one place. Your hands are free to explore her curves, her back, her neck, the space between her shoulder blades, and every touch from you becomes an extension of the rhythm inside her. Your hand sliding up her spine while your body moves with hers, your fingers gripping her thighs as she pushes back into you. It all becomes part of the sensation, part of the symphony. And when she feels surrounded like that, when she feels your presence in multiple ways at once, it magnifies everything, because she's not just being touched. She's being taken. She's being enveloped in pleasure that comes from every direction. And when your hand finds her most sensitive spots, when you reach around to stimulate her at the front while maintaining your rhythm from the back. You tap into a level of pleasure that makes her lose her breath. That makes her body shake uncontrollably, because the stimulation is double, it's deep, and it's unpredictable, and unpredictability is intoxicating. It keeps her mind guessing, keeps her body reacting, and removes the mechanical nature that some experiences can fall into, because now it's alive. Now it's responsive, and when a woman feels like you're exploring her, not just using her body for your own finish line, but really exploring her with curiosity, with care, and with fire, she'll open up to you in ways she never expected. Her body will speak a language that only a man who pays attention can understand, and you'll learn that every shift in angle, every subtle rotation of her hips, every deep exhale she releases, is guiding you to give her more of what she didn't even know she needed. And as her body becomes more sensitive, more soaked, more reactive, you begin to realize that this level of stimulation isn't just about one act. It's about the permission she's given herself to feel everything, to be completely lost in the sensation without guilt, without pressure, without having to perform. And in this moment of deep sensory connection, she's not just feeling you. She's feeling herself more fully, and that sweetness she keeps coming back to, that gasp she releases when the angle hits just right, that sudden arch of her back when you move deeper and slower and then faster again. All of that is her body saying yes, yes to the stimulation, yes to the connection, yes to the pleasure that doesn't just stay on the surface but touches her from the inside out. Most people don't realize how much pressure women feel when it comes to intimacy. Not just the act itself, but everything surrounding it, the unspoken expectations, the way we're constantly aware of how we look, how we sound, how we move, how we're being perceived, and it's not always something we talk about, but it's there, simmering underneath every touch, every moment, every glance, and it can be exhausting because even in the most intimate spaces, we sometimes feel like we're performing, like we're being watched, like we have to make sure we look attractive while still feeling pleasure, and it creates a tension inside that can be hard to release, especially when you're face to face, when his eyes are locked on yours, when you feel the need to match his energy with your expressions, your rhythm, your responses, and sometimes instead of getting lost in the moment, we get stuck in our heads, wondering if we're doing it right, if we're good enough, if we're sexy enough. And that's why there's something profoundly freeing about being taken from behind, something that allows a woman to just be, to stop acting, to stop curating an experience and actually feel one. Because when she turns away, when she arches forward, when she lets her body lead instead of her face, she steps into a place where the pressure to perform disappears, and what's left is pure sensation, pure surrender, pure presence. And that's not something a lot of men truly understand, because so often you're taught to look at her, to watch her reactions, to read her face for clues about what feels good. But what happens when you take that element away, when you can't see her expressions, when she doesn't have to think about being seen, is that she stops filtering herself, she stops editing her responses, she stops holding back the moans, the gasps, the cries that come from somewhere deep inside, the kind that are raw and real and completely unplanned. And those are the moments that change everything. Those are the sounds that make your body shiver because you know she's not faking, she's not forcing anything, she's lost in it, completely immersed in the moment because she feels safe enough to lose control. And that is a powerful thing for a woman, to let go of control, to let her body take over, to not worry about how she looks from the front, to not wonder if she's making the right faces, to not care if her hair is a mess, or if she's biting her lip too hard, or if her voice is shaking. She doesn't have to think. She doesn't have to correct. She doesn't have to shape her experience for someone else's view. She can just feel it as it happens, raw and messy and perfect in its imperfection. And from behind, she feels everything more privately, more personally, and that privacy creates intimacy of a different kind, one that's quiet but loud, one that doesn't need eye contact to be deep, because the depth comes from within, from the way her body opens without needing to explain itself. And when you're there, behind her, holding her, moving with her, she senses everything, not with her eyes but with her skin, her breath, her spine, and in that moment, every touch becomes louder, every thrust more meaningful, not because of what you see, but because of what she feels. And this is where her sweetest responses live, not in the polished performance of passion, but in the raw reality of surrender, because for many women, letting go is one of the hardest things to do. We are raised to be composed, to keep things neat, to be good girls who smile through discomfort, but in that position, when she doesn't have to be watched, when she doesn't have to please anyone's gaze, she reclaims something primal, something that isn't about being pretty or graceful, about being open, honest, uninhibited. And when a woman feels uninhibited, her body tells the truth. It says what she can't say in words. It pulses, it shakes, it pulls you in and holds you there without asking, because it wants more, because it's finally allowed to ask for more without shame, without filters, without thinking about whether she's too loud, too intense, too wild. And that's where you'll witness the most real version of her pleasure, the one that's not concerned with choreography, the one that's not about eye contact or lighting or even romance. It's about presence, about freedom, about her finally letting go of the weight she carries and diving into something real. And the crazy part is that it's often this position, this simple physical shift, that gives her the permission she never knew she needed, the permission to feel everything, to take everything, to not give anything back in that moment except the truth of her reaction. And if you're tuned in, if you're present with her, you'll feel it. You'll feel her body move with yours in a way that's almost spiritual, almost sacred, because she's not just responding to your body. She's responding to how you're making her feel about herself, about being free, about being enough without having to look perfect. And when you make a woman feel that, when you allow her to unravel without judgment, she will remember it forever, not just as a good experience, but as a liberating one, the kind that breaks through her mental walls, the kind that feels safe, raw, passionate, and beautifully unfiltered. There's a depth to intimacy that most people never explore. A level where touch is no longer just touch, where movement becomes a message, where silence speaks louder than words, and in that space, psychological intensity is everything. It's not just about what the body is doing, but what the mind is experiencing, because for a woman, real connection is felt in the unseen spaces, in the energy between two bodies, in the unspoken trust that's built moment by moment. And one of the most vulnerable things she can do is turn her back to you and still allow you in. That simple act may look like a change in position, but psychologically it's so much more. It's a silent declaration of trust, a signal that says, I believe you won't hurt me, I believe you'll hold me, I believe you'll still see me even when you can't look into my eyes. And that takes courage, that takes safety, because we don't give our backs to people we don't trust. We don't open ourselves in that way to someone who hasn't first shown that he's emotionally present. And when she gives you that, when she arches forward and exposes that level of vulnerability, it's not just sensual, it's sacred, because now it's not about faces or words or seduction. It's about pure presence, about reading her energy, listening to her breath, feeling the shifts in her body that speak louder than anything she could say. And from that angle, you get a front row seat to her surrender, not just physically but emotionally. And that intensity starts to build slowly, quietly, like a wave forming under the surface. And before you know it, you're both drowning in something deeper than just physical pleasure. You're immersed in her trust, in her fire, in her softness. And the reason it feels so different from this position is because it strips away the distractions. There's no need to perform, no pressure to maintain eye contact, no tension of facial expectations, just raw energy, raw connection, raw desire. And what shocks most men is how deeply a woman feels this moment, not because it's visually stimulating, but because it bypasses the surface and hits her core. And when she feels like you're fully behind her, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, it does something to her. It activates something primal, something ancient, a memory buried deep in her body of what it feels like to be protected, claimed, and respected all at once. And when those emotions flood through her, her response becomes intense, more intense than you might expect, because you're no longer just moving in rhythm with her body, you're moving in rhythm with her emotions. And that's why it can feel overwhelming, why her breath shortens, why her legs start to shake, why her voice catches in her throat, because what you're creating in that moment is not just pleasure, it's release, a release of control, a release of pressure, a release of all the emotional weight she didn't know she was carrying until she felt it melting away with each movement. And the beauty of psychological intensity is that it builds in silence. It doesn't need music or dirty talk or even wild movement. It just needs you to be there, fully there, paying attention, tuning into her body language, her breath patterns, the way her fingers clutch the sheets or the way her hips begin to meet your rhythm more eagerly. And the moment you notice those cues and respond to them without asking, without needing instructions, you send a message back to her nervous system that says you're safe, you're seen, you're allowed to feel everything. And in a world that constantly demands women to be composed, to be controlled, to always keep it together, this kind of experience becomes a rebellion, a quiet escape into freedom, because when you're inside her from behind and you match her energy, when you move in sync with what she's giving, when you know when to slow down and when to push deeper, you create a space where her mind can stop racing, where she can come out of her head and drop fully into her body, and that drop is everything. That drop is where the true sweetness lies, because now you're not just a man moving inside her. You're the force that's grounding her, the energy that's holding her together while she falls apart in the most beautiful way. And every part of her feels that, not just her body but her heart, her spirit, her soul, because this kind of connection doesn't happen every day. It doesn't happen with every partner. It happens when presence meets trust, when rhythm meets awareness, and when intention meets emotion. And that's why even long after the moment ends, long after the heat fades and the sheets are cold again, she'll remember what it felt like to be entered from behind by someone who understood that her body wasn't just an object of pleasure, but a vessel of emotion, memory, vulnerability, and fire. And the intensity she felt wasn't about the angle or the pace or even the act itself. It was about how deeply she was felt, how completely she was received, and how safe it was to let go without needing to explain anything at all. Sometimes what makes a moment feel sweet isn't just what's happening in the now, but what that moment brings back, the way a certain touch, a certain movement, a certain rhythm can awaken memories hidden so deep within her that she didn't even know they were still there. And when you enter her from behind, when your bodies meet in that specific way, the angle, the sensation, the stretch, the energy, it becomes a trigger, not always consciously, not always something she can put into words, but something that her body remembers, because the body has a memory of its own, a memory that stores pleasure, pain, tenderness, tension. And when a woman truly feels safe, when her heart and body are open, her body starts to access those archives without warning. And what may feel like just a physical experience on the outside can actually unlock something emotional within her. Sometimes it takes her back to a night she once felt deeply connected, a time where someone held her like she mattered, where the act wasn't just sex but a message that she was loved, desired, honored, and your touch, your movement, your voice behind her brings that same emotional fingerprint into the present moment, reminding her that she's still worthy of that kind of love, that kind of closeness, that kind of fire. And sometimes it's not even a good memory. Sometimes it's a memory of what she didn't get, a moment that feels so good now because it shows her how much she was missing before, how often she gave her body to people who never saw her, never cherished her, never touched her like she was art, like she was magic. And now you're showing her what it's supposed to feel like. You're teaching her a new language through your fingertips and your rhythm and your breath on her neck. And in that moment, her body begins to rewrite old stories, stories of disappointment, of disconnection, of duty. And suddenly she feels a surge of something she didn't expect. Gratitude, release, tears she didn't see coming, moans that don't sound like her own, because her body is reacting not only to your touch, but to the freedom you've given her to feel what she couldn't feel before. And this is the kind of sweetness that lingers, the kind that stays with her long after the room is quiet again, because now she associates that position, that angle, that memory with something healing, something new, something emotional. And that's why sometimes when you're behind her and everything feels so intense, it's not just about the way you're moving, it's about What you're waking up inside her, because from that place, she's not just giving you access to her body, she's giving you access to her memory, to her emotional archive, to a part of her that doesn't open easily. And when she realizes you're not rushing it, not using it, not trying to conquer it, but instead honoring it with your presence, with your patience, with your power, it makes her feel so safe, so adored, so remembered, like she finally matters in a way that isn't performative, isn't conditional, isn't just physical. And when her body feels that deep sense of mattering, it responds with intensity, with sweetness, with surrender. And that's when everything feels amplified, when the sensation starts to blend with emotion, when the lines blur between pleasure and meaning, and every thrust becomes a message that says, I see you, I feel you, I want you, not just your body, but your essence, your story, your soul. And what many men don't realize is that when you access a woman emotionally, her body opens wider, responds faster, gets wetter, gets warmer, and the more you stir her heart, the more she gives her body, not because she has to, but because she wants to. Because in that moment, being entered from behind feels like being held in the most protective way, like being supported from the foundation, like being filled and grounded at the same time, and the memory that comes with that can be deeply spiritual, deeply soothing, deeply transformative. It's the kind of memory that doesn't just belong to her mind, it becomes muscle memory, body memory, a sensation she'll crave again because it reminds her of her own softness, her own capacity to feel, and more importantly, her right to feel, because so often women are told to suppress, to harden, to move on. But here, in this space, with you behind her, hands strong but gentle, pace steady but intuitive, she gets to remember her power, her fire, her femininity, and she gets to do it without apology, without shame. And when you give her that, when your presence allows her to travel through those layers of emotional depth while feeling physical ecstasy, you're not just giving her pleasure, you're giving her healing, you're giving her memory a new meaning, and she will not forget that. She will not forget the way you made her feel like more than just a body, more than just a performance, more than just a temporary fix. She'll remember that you touched something inside her no one else had reached. And that's the kind of sweetness she won't find anywhere else. So, when we say she feels it sweet from the back, it's not just a fantasy or a cliche. It's about the deeper layers: physical sensation, emotional surrender, mental relaxation, and primal chemistry. It's about how you show up in that moment. Are you present? Are you patient? Are you reading her energy or just chasing your own? Because when it's done with intention, with love, with rhythm, it becomes more than just a position. It becomes an experience, and that, gentlemen, is why it feels so incredibly sweet.